Well, hello, lovely podcast listener. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Breaking the Blocks. I'm Rachel, and today my guest is Lucy Brennan. You might know her as Charm About You on Instagram. She hosts a Saturday night craft along there. She's also been on the Telly Box. She was on the Sewing Quarter many years ago. But in this interview, I wanted to talk about the changes that Lucy has undergone, because I've known her for some time, and I know that Lucy has faced some very dark and challenging moments, particularly in the last few years. She's changed her life quite considerably and has faced a lot of her own blocks. So let's find out how she has faced those blocks, those challenges, and how she's overcome them. Well, hello. Gorgeous Lucy Brennan. She's back in the Crafty Monkey house. How many years has it been, Lucy? How many years? It feels like 6, but I think we've lived through 6 years through COVID times.
Yeah, I think time is just irrelevant at this point. I don't know. I never know what day it is, who I am most of the time. Too long.
No.
Say that.
It's been too long. It's been too long. So we should explain to our lovely viewers, Lucy, if they're thinking, well, what? That you, of course, used to be one of my lovely tutors, teachers, artists that worked with us. And then you went off to get a full-time job, which we'll talk about in a second. And so that's why you said, I haven't got time to teach anymore. But the door is always open. I'm reminded of a song in the 80s now, Lucy. The door is open wide. Anyway. I don't know where I went into that. It's interesting that you say time is irrelevant. I think time is irrelevant anyway. And I know you and I are a little bit on the kind of spiritual spectrum, so we'll talk about that later. But the thing is, what is time? I think we just have to live in the present moment, don't we?
Absolutely. And I do that more and more and more. I think the older I get, the more it just doesn't matter. I just focus on what I need to do, and it's going to move anyway. It? The passage of time.
Exactly. The passage of time. So, Lucy, let's talk about, first of all, your creativity, because for anybody who's watching on YouTube, they would be able to see that behind you is a lovely piece of hand stitching that you did, cross stitching, which is something you taught for us here at Monkeys. So have you always been creative? Because people may know you from your Saturday night craft along, which you still do. I still see you in the feeds doing that. But have you always sort of sewed, or was it something you came to later in life? I know that you're still doing it, even though you are working full time. So how and when did it all start for you, this crafty adventure?
So yes, I have always had that part of me. I did the very 80s hair scrunchies, friendship bands, that sort of thing. That piece there is black work that I started in 1988 and finished, I think, last year or the year before. Again, time, who knows. But my mum dug that out of our sort of shed at her house. So, yeah, I've always done little bits, drawing, painting, all of that sort of thing. My nan did a lot of crochet. My mum's a knitter. So it is in my genes, I think.
Yes. Yeah. It's so often that I hear that grandmas are the ones who taught us to do things, or mums, but it's a lot of grandmas. I think it's changing again, because I think the generation, our mums' generation, they seem to have lost that crafting thing in a way. It was the grandmas that really taught us our crafty things, because I think our mums were too busy going out and trying to, make a living and bring us up. And then it seems to now this generation have kind of got back into it again. It's kind of exploding again, isn't it? Which is really interesting. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that now we are becoming more crafty?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think there's a lot of the make, do, amend kind of philosophy has come back in. Truthfully, I don't think clothes are as well made all the time as they used to be. So people are fixing things, repairing things, and I think just the pressures. Maybe our generation was, you can be anything, you can do anything, you can have it all, and that's actually a lot of pressure. So having an outlet that allows you to be mindful, focus on that one thing. You're not having all the pressure of the outside world attacking you, and that sort of one stitch at a time. It is a very meditative process, I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes frustrating and all of that, but I think it's just that time for yourself.
So let's talk about what that does for you then, because you've obviously gone back to regular work. It was your full-time thing for a while because you were on TV and things. I mean, was it just a financial decision for you to have to go back to a full-time job, or was there some of that feeling of I need to move on or something? What was the decision in going back to work?
There was a lot at play, and I'm going to just start this by saying everybody's journey is different. I'm not casting aspersions. I'm not making recommendations. It really is different for everybody. So I just want to be really clear on that. And when I'm talking, I'm going to say for me. So for me, it became just like churning things out. And I did feel the burnout, and I did feel like I was losing some creativity, and it wasn't as fun, realistically. There was no stability. And while I'm okay with that on some level, I'm a Capricorn, I'm quite traditional. And what I've realized is routine, structure, order suit me. It didn't happen. It wasn't really an intentional decision, honestly. What happened was I was doing the TV work, a lot of which was very fun. The people made it really fun. The work itself was far more laborious than I think anybody realizes. I think television has an amazing way of making everything just appear so easy and so simple, but you have to make a finished product, you have to create all of the steps to be able to show. It's very involved. And doing that with quilting, quilters will know quilts, something simple you can do relatively quickly, but something more complex takes a lot of time. And then my intention was to be teaching. And I just so happened to go to a sewing machine manufacturer. Everyone will know who it is. They offered me a job and was really happy to have something full time. And I was still, doing some education there. But then obviously COVID and everything, I ended up working from home. So that was how that happened, really. And then I was still doing bits of teaching, but it just got it was too much. It was too much with family and working full time and trying to still maintain that level that I had. So a lot of things kind of petered away. And even within that job, when you're talking about sewing all day long, the last thing you want to do is touch your sewing machine. So ultimately, I found even in that, I wasn't feeling as creative as I had been. So I was thinking, what do I want to do? I ended up doing some courses online. I hadn't done any learning for a really long time, so I went back to that. I did. There's a place called Course. I think you pronounce it Coursera. I could be pronouncing it wrong. And they do online courses. So I did some Google courses with them. Did project management. Did some UX, and then ultimately ended up in the role I'm in now, which is content design. So my background is in English. I did an English degree, did sociology masters. So I kind of felt like, I'm going back into something a little bit more academic. It suits me in that way. And that's always been a passion of mine as well, writing and reading. So I'm sort of like an online editor a bit, and it's a lot to do with accessibility. It's really interesting. Love the job. And that has allowed me then to have quilting and sewing be my hobby and my passion. So I still do some in-person teaching because I really do enjoy that. And I would like to say I'm blogging, but it's become a bit rarer because I don't have the time. I have all the ideas, they're all in there. I will get those blog posts out one day. And then the community on Instagram, like you said, the Saturday night craft along. So still maintaining those kinds of relationships, but it becomes fun again rather than having to do something. And I can't remember where it was, but I think it was a podcast. Somebody was saying when there's monetary value associated with something, it changes it. And for me, that was true. I felt like it became more of a chore, and trying to be creative on demand is a very difficult thing. So that burnout that Lucy was talking about was real for me too.
It's a very fine line, isn't it? When you are, like you say, creating or creating for money. I mean, it's how many times have we heard this? I mean, when I came up with this name for this podcast, Breaking the Blocks, I was kind of like throwing out words to sort of think of what I could call this podcast and all sorts of words. And I was going sewing, quilting. And then I just thought of writer's block. And I was like, oh, yeah, writer's block. Well, artists have blocks. How about if we break the blocks, breaking the blocks? And then that was it, really. But how many times have we heard that it's writer's block? And I do think it can be for a writer if there is, as you say, a deadline, money on the line. You've got to come up with something. I wonder why that is, that it stops. I wonder what that block is in the brain, because there must be a block that's associated with the pressure.
Absolutely. Yes. I think the pressure's part of it. And then it also becomes less about you. So because you're doing things for others, you're trying to focus on other people. And I think one of the hardest things for me was thinking what people want and what people want to see and what people want to do.
Yes. So let's talk about that expectation and pressure then, because there was a point when you were on that path in terms of building that. You've got the TV career, you've got the teaching, you've got the blogging, so you are sort of trying to put yourself in some sort of in the path somewhere. So what about those expectations and pressures on yourself? Did you feel even at that point, did you feel things start to cave in a little bit, even though you were kind of running with it? Was there a little voice in the back of your mind saying, Lucy, we're kind of, what are we doing here?
Yes.
How did you listen to that voice, if there was one?
Yeah, there was one. I don't think I knew it at the time, maybe. But the thing is, I didn't. It's funny because my path is a very strange one. I had some coaching at work and it really helped me to understand it. Most of the things that I've done, even though I chose to do them, I didn't seek them out. I was approached to do the TV stuff. It wasn't something I sought out. So it was never on my vision board to be on TV. It wasn't even something.
You keep mentioning, pressure, expectations. I can absolutely feel that is something you do not want. You do not want it. It's a really strong kind of guttural reaction to that. So you mentioned about, struggling with anxiety. I saw this great meme the other day. It was the scene from Grease with John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John. And it was just a couple of seconds of them driving in their car, obviously a fake car, and looking really happy and all nicely washed and turned out. And it said 2019. And then the next scene was John Travolta and Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction, where she looks like, well, she has had a night on the town, let's put it that way. And so has he. And they're in this car, both looking a little bit disheveled. And it says, 2023 or going into 2024. And I just thought, oh, I get that. Some people would look at that thinking, what? But I did. I got it. And I think you and I had some very, deep discussions, didn't we, in that period, that 3-year period? Because I think I really did go on my own spiritual journey. Now, we might have lost some listeners now. We've mentioned the word spiritual, Lucy. But I do think when we talk about that little voice in your head that was going, Lucy, I don't know what this voice is, but I think we all have this voice and we have to try and access it somehow and listen to it. But I think it is our higher selves. It's our soul. It's something in us that has that reaction, which you're saying, pressure, expectations, no. And it's listening to that voice, isn't it? Let's talk about that, the 3-year journey that you went on, because I went on as well. What happened to you in that 3 years? Because it has been a big turnaround. And I know that there were many, many dark days for you in those 3 years.
That inner voice, that self, I think for anyone listening who's freaking out a little bit, it could be you, it could be Jiminy Cricket, it could be the universe, it could be whatever you attribute it to, but we all have it, regardless of what we call it, what we think it is. We absolutely all have it. And I think lockdown and, that whole period of time was incredibly difficult for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. And I do think for some people it created an opportunity, or a forced opportunity, if you don't want to see it as positively, to reflect and to make some changes. And for me, really going to try not to get emotional, but it's very, very difficult. I lost my nan during that time. I had therapy many, many years ago, and that was my worst fear. It has always been my worst fear. So for your worst fear to materialize and to lose the person that you relied on the most was incredibly difficult. So that contributed to it as well. And I did a lot of questioning of myself. And yes, what do I really want? And what is my purpose? And what am I here for? And am I making the most of myself? And I think my self-worth grew immensely. Immensely. And it was about what I was doing, but it was about how I felt about what I was doing. And I needed to be doing something that really fulfilled me. And there's so much, and there has been so much for many, many years, about do what you love, follow your passion, reap what you sow, all these sorts of, kinds of things around having what you do be what you love, and they're so intertwined, and you should start your own business and you should do XYZ. And I had done that previously, and it didn't give me the satisfaction and fulfillment that I wanted it to. And I felt like the things that I really enjoy and the things that I really love to do for me need to kind of be mostly for me. And we talked about that monetary thing, but also I didn't have the stability that I crave, and having a full-time job kind of gave me that, and I saw it, but I felt like I needed just a bit more, and I needed to be doing something that I felt passionate about, but was separate from the things I loved to do. You can only do so much, and there's so much I want to do, but I've got to be more realistic with myself, recognize when I'm feeling burnt out, what fills up my cup, what gives me that level, that happiness, joy. And I see it in little things all of the time, and I look for it, and that's what fills me up. It's when I have all the external that it just gets too much. And a lot of those pressures, even though it feels like it's coming from outside, I know I'm putting them on myself. I know that. So it was, how do I rid myself of feeling that pressure that I'm putting on myself? How do I alleviate that pressure that I'm putting on myself?
I saw this great quote the other day from Eckhart. I never know how you say his name. Is it Tolle? In this present moment right now, stop and look at what you have to worry about in this moment, because all you have is this moment, and that should give you peace. And I know some people will go, yeah, but in this moment, I'm behind on my mortgage. Yes, but we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen in a year. And the past doesn't matter. So I understand that is a huge pressure, been there. It's a huge pressure to have those financial difficulties. But in this moment, you probably still have that roof over your head. And all you can do is get through this moment. All you can do is get through this day and not put those pressures on yourself. I've got to do this. I've got to pay this mortgage. I've got to get a job right now. Because you can't, you have to just take it day by day by day. And it's about listening to that voice. And that's what I used to do, Lucy. I just was constantly looking ahead. It's like if you just sit with yourself, you'll find that if you're in the right energy, things will come to you. But you do have to make those decisions, though. As you say, you had to make that decision, right? I'm going to get a job. I know what I want to do. You have to make decisions, but don't pressure yourself. I'm sure that you didn't think, right, I've got to go and get this job and I need it within a week. Otherwise, everything's going to go wrong. If you do that, you're not going to find that job. You're not going to find
Absolutely.
it. You have to just sit and believe.
And you have to, I think it's a really tricky thing, because I absolutely believe you get what you put out. I really, really, to my core, feel that way. But really bad things happen to really good people.
Yeah.
And really bad things happen to really good people who are really positive. So you can't explain it all away. And I have no intention of trying to do so. And positive thinking itself, you can't think yourself happy and you don't feel it really. And just trying to stop the negative with the positive, it doesn't really work if you don't feel it inside of yourself. So it's not a simple thing. And I wouldn't expect anybody listening to just think that that's the case. But it is, I keep saying to anyone who listens, I'm a really happy person and I'm a really positive person. And I am very optimistic. I consider myself incredibly optimistic. But that doesn't come 100% naturally. I am a worrier. I inherited that from my nan. We used to have many conversations. We just talk about all the worries of everybody in the family, and that would sort of fix it for us. Because you have to be real, you have to be honest. And I think saying what you're worried about, it can be really helpful. I'm really worried about this thing. And then you do have to sort of let it go. But you also have to go, well, what can I do about it? What is within my control? What would make it better? And sometimes you might have no options, and that absolutely sucks. But hopefully you've got somebody that you can talk to about it, or you find an organisation where there's somebody that you can talk to about it. There's always, Oprah said once, like, there's always a choice. There's always a choice. So your choices might not be great, but you have that option to make a choice about it. So I choose to do something for myself in a particular way. And if it doesn't work out, X, Y, Z, but we'll get there when we get there, because I've never thought about the future. When I was younger, all I ever wanted was to have a family. I am so blessed and lucky that happened for me. And so then career-wise, it's like, what do I do now? And I think for a lot of women in those situations who haven't been very career-driven, that's sometimes the case. You're like, okay, what am I? You do what you can. But the biggest thing is being in the moment. It's so cliche. I kind of hate it, but it is true. Being in the moment, recognizing the small things, being grateful. Being grateful is huge to me. Being grateful for the small things, being grateful for the people in your life. And we all get busy. I don't see my friends half as much as I want to, but they've got families, I've got families, they've got jobs. It's difficult, but just making a connection, sending a message, send a meme, send a GIF, all of these kinds of things. Just reaching out a little bit when you feel up to it. And I don't always feel up to it. That can be really difficult if you do have anxiety. I have to push myself, and that's not easy. I don't say it lightly. Some days that's incredibly difficult, but the more you do it, you can kind of train yourself to do it. And even if it starts out feeling a bit cheesy, writing down 3 things that you're grateful for, it could be air, whatever. I love my eyes. grateful all the time for my eyes. Silly, just little things, but when I say it, it feels good. Things that you enjoy, things that you like. Good.
Exactly. And, I think it was really good that you said you could be grateful for air. And, I saw something else on Instagram and it was saying, when you have your to-do list, instead of saying, oh, I've got to exercise, or I've got to go to the shop to do the food shopping, or I've got to pay that gas bill. And I think it had other sort of much bigger things. Instead of saying got to, just say, I'm lucky I have the chance to do that. So I'm lucky I can pay that gas bill because I've got the money in the bank to do it. There are people who haven't. I'm lucky that I can exercise. I can go out for a walk, and because there are lots of people who cannot walk, so you have to be grateful for, as you say, whatever it is. You have to be grateful for what you have. And I do agree with you, Lucy. It makes such a change in your life. I used to stand there only, I would say probably maybe even 3 years ago. I would stand there often and go, oh, I hate my life. I would stand there and say that all the time. And it became a bit of a joke in the household. But I would say that all the time. And now, even just saying it then, Lucy, makes me feel a bit sick. Because I just think, I can't believe I did that. I hate my life because I have so many things in my life to be grateful for. And one of them is being alive. My dad died in October 22. He was gone. And I know that if someone gave him the chance to come back, he'd be here in a second, even though in his last few years of his life, he was filled with chronic anxiety, panic attacks, and depression. But I know he would come back now and go, oh, I can't believe I went through all that. Now, I'm not saying, because I've been there, I've had panic attacks, I've had depression, I've had anxiety. So I'm not saying, oh, get over it, you should be grateful. Not at all. Those are major issues. But what I'm saying is, I agree with you. Gratitude really helps. And even if you have a panic attack and you get over it, recognize that that panic attack has gone, that you're now stable for a few minutes, and be grateful that you're now being stable for a few minutes, and build on that. And maybe if the panic attacks become less, keep concentrating on, I've only had 2 today. Yesterday I had 3. Okay, that's a good thing. We're okay. We're okay. We're getting better. Try and focus on the positives because it does make a huge, huge difference.
I think it's because I've had depression as well, medical, depression, and that is a whole different thing. Thinking positive thoughts is not going to help that in any way, shape, or form. It's a chemical imbalance in your brain. You need help with it, so you get the help that you need. What this way of thinking helps me with is keeping it at bay. So when I know, and that's why I'm saying I have to work at being optimistic. Is all of these practices help me from sliding down a very slippery slope, which, let's face it, is quite easy to do. And know, if anybody has felt that way and has slipped down that slope, it's an easy thing to do. And getting help is really, really important. Just my nan always said, do one thing. Just do one thing. When I was really depressed, I just had my first child. I was horribly, horribly depressed. And she just said, just do one thing because you get to tick it off. You've done it and you're not setting unrealistic expectations for yourself. And it's also a really good way of prioritizing what is the one thing that you really need to do or get done. So, there's loads of tricks like that, and everyone will find their own way, their own method. For me, it largely is the being present and the finding things to be grateful for.
Yeah. I would say if you have a radio in your house, or you have your phone that has some music on it, or you have a record player, crawl to that radio, press the on button, listen to some music, and just make yourself stand up in the kitchen or the bedroom or the bathroom and move your body. Just do it. Even if you think, I can't get myself off the floor, I'm so depressed, my life is in the toilet. Just tell yourself, all right, but you know what? For 3 minutes, I'm going to move my body, and just try and do it. This is not going to stop your depression, but it will for 3 minutes. And that 3 minutes, if you can lose yourself in that music, put a bit of ABBA on, put on David Bowie, put on whatever you want, put some heavy rock on and bang your head, not literally on the wall, but, try and do that. It's like you're changing the energy around you, and you might laugh at yourself, but that 3 minutes will at least give you 3 minutes of peace. And that's something to build on. But as we've said, if it is chronic depression, go and talk to someone. I loved what you said about your nan. You used to talk to her, talk these things out. And I think it's really important, Lucy, to recognize that voice that's telling you that something is not right here, to recognize that you're struggling. And you can either, if you can afford therapy, go to your doctors, get some NHS treatment, or talk to your friends. I did therapy years ago, and one of the biggest tools she gave me in my toolbox was to talk to people. I remember, Lucy, I was such a drama queen, but I do remember I said to her that I'd sat in the corner of my room. Do you remember that scene in Fatal Attraction with Glenn Close? Lot of sex. There's a bit where she sits on the floor. The character she's playing, she's deranged, but she sits on the floor and she just turns the light on and off, and there's Madame Butterfly in the background, and the scar is down her face. And I used to do that to myself. I would bathe in this depression. I would bathe in this unhappiness, and I'd sit there. And my therapist said, I'm going to give you a tool for your toolbox. You must make a phone call when that happens. Make a phone call to someone. Because, of course, I think in those days we didn't have text. But she said, pick up the phone and speak to someone. And that's one of the biggest tools I've learned, because there's always someone you can call. Call someone. Because otherwise you'll just go further and further down that rabbit hole.
Your voices will tell you not to call. Your voices will tell you not to call, and you have to call. You have to. And that even, or message, message if it's easier, but something about speaking to people. We spoke when you lost your dad. It was incredibly difficult. And the other side of that is if you're in a good place, reach out to somebody who you think might not be. Because even if they're not ready to talk, letting them know that you're there if they need to can be incredibly helpful, because it gives somebody permission to call you when they're lying on the bathroom floor.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned something as well, Lucy. You said self-worth, and your self-worth had improved. Now, if anybody is kind of into the spiritual side of things, I've done a lot of research in the last 3 years about all sorts of things, from a very literal point of view of gratitude, being positive, how this can help your life, to what is this universe all about? And in the last 3 years, there are some kind of leaders in that world who have said the divine feminine, we've all got masculine and feminine in our bodies, but the feminines, it's been about improving your self-worth, finding it in yourself. And the masculine, it's been about becoming more vulnerable and more open. And about balancing the two, which is really fascinating if you read about it. And I won't go on about it here because it's not the place, but if you read about it. And when I'm talking to men and women, it is amazing how so many people who are not aware of that kind of thing have said, oh yeah, I've realized in the last 3 years I've always given to everybody else, and it's been time to give to myself, and I feel so much better about it, and I know who I am now. And then I've met men who have said, yeah, I started opening up more, really, and it's really helped me. And I think, there's something weird going on here, because so many people this has happened to. But you said that your self-worth had improved. Mine certainly has. I used to sabotage my life. I used to sabotage my friendships, sabotage my relationship by doing things that were not good for me and lowered my self-worth. So what about your self-worth, Lucy? How has that improved? How have you improved that self-worth? And what was the issue with your self-worth? Did you feel you didn't have much value, or where was it coming from?
That is a very interesting question and not something I have particularly reflected on. I suspect
Mm.
a lot of my self-worth came from it's different at different phases of my life. So since having children, a lot of my self-worth was in being a mother. And it's that age-old thing of putting on your oxygen mask before you put on your oxygen mask of the kids. And I wasn't doing. I was putting on their oxygen masks. Who am I? What am I? All of those kinds of things. And it did all sort of come to a head, really. Am I being fulfilled by what I'm doing? And work makes up such a big part of your life. If I'm doing something that I give value to, it gives value back to me. So my self worth has grown exponentially. And I've always felt like I am a good person. I try, I'm not perfect and I don't get everything right. I try to be good. And so I have value. Everybody has value as a human being. But what is the worth that I'm ascribing to myself, and where am I getting that from? My nan used to call sewing work. Am I awful that I've got 50 quilts that I haven't finished? Probably a little bit, but I'm not going to let it bother me. And I'm going to work on the ones I want to and do it when I want to, in the time that I want to, because enjoying it is the point for me now.
Yeah, I love what you say there about putting the oxygen mask on yourself first. They always say that on a plane, don't they? And I do think that is such a metaphor for life. Put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Because if you yourself are not whole, if your cup is not filled, you cannot give to anybody else properly.
Absolutely. And it's a cliche because it's true. Cliches are cliches because everybody says them because they are true. So you have got to fill yourself up in whatever way that is. And spirituality is a huge part of it for me. My faith is a huge part of it. And I have alternative things that I, get enjoyment from and comfort from. Comfort's another really big thing. I don't think we talked about that, but what's giving me comfort? Who's comforting me? And that again was a really big part of that discovery, because I lost the person who gave me the most comfort. I'm not saying my parents don't, my parents absolutely do. My family does, my husband does, my kids do. But sometimes you need it in a different way. My nan gave it to me in a way that nobody else could. It's just impossible. I won't ever have that relationship with anybody else ever again. And I'm okay with it. And I'm so grateful that I did. I'm so grateful I had that relationship with it. But what other things give me comfort? In what small ways can I glean comfort from something? And if that is me holding a crystal, that is me holding a crystal. And if that is somebody doing some stargazing, I'm trying to think what other things people might do, or lighting a candle, or, and maybe people think that's weird, just sitting in a room lighting a candle and looking at the flame. But great, if that makes you feel at peace, you're not hurting anybody, and I think sometimes there's an association with things that are spiritual or mystical, that they're evil, and that probably all stems from, various religions. And I am a religious person, so I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. But if somebody is doing something, it's not hurting anybody else, and it's giving them some joy or some peace or some comfort, let it be. A crystal may have very similar properties to a pebble that you find on the beach. I mean, physically they have different properties, but if rubbing a stone, you don't have to go and buy a £50 amethyst. You can go and get a pebble from the beach. So there are different ways of kind of experiencing those things. And haven't we all been in that? Okay, maybe this is just me and it's weird, but when you go to the seaside or somewhere, or you go out into a park and you find like a really nice twig or a really nice stone or shell or something, and you feel like it somehow speaks to you and it's like meant to be yours, that's something that might seem very strange to somebody else. It, but it works for me. So let people have the thing and find the thing. If you don't have one, find one. Read some books, look into things, do what makes you feel good. And sometimes that's things from your childhood. And that's so lovely. How lovely to have something. And that can give me comfort. Holding a stone. It sounds bonkers, but it works for me.
Yeah, I love that. Do you know, we went to the beach recently, and my husband was walking along, and he picked up 5 stones on his travels, and he was with Maddie, our daughter, and he said, "I'm going to give one to your mum." He said, "Which one do you think she would like? Because I'm going to choose one." And he chose a stone. She agreed and said, "That's the best one she would like." And it wasn't like he'd picked a pink one in 5 brown ones. I mean, they were all pretty similar, but it just, they all had little different markings and they felt different. And then they walked over to me and said, "Here are 5 stones. We've picked one for you out of them. Which one was it?" And I picked the same stone. Isn't that amazing? And they said, we just knew. And I said, I know. And now, as you say, that stone sits on my desk. I've also got a vase full of feathers. Because I went through a period of, if I find a feather, that's a message for me. And I found black ones, white ones, all sorts of ones. And they would have different meanings. But what I find now is I look at that vase of feathers and it reminds me of the days when I found the feathers, which were really happy days. So as you say, it's about whatever brings you comfort. And as you say, if that's sitting and looking at a candle. And I think when we say the word meditation, people think you have to be wearing yoga pants, doing a cross-leg position in a beautiful home with several candles and the essence of woo burning. I mean, you don't. I mean, you know, you really don't.
You can if you want. You can if you want. I have never been able to do that. I can't. I can meditate. I understand the principles of meditation. I don't enjoy it. It doesn't do for me what it seems to do for other people. And I know it is a discipline, and I know it's something that you work at, and it's something to be taken very seriously. But it just in my core does not fulfill me in the way I would hope that it had. But sitting in silence does. And so I can just sit in silence, and maybe that is meditation, maybe it isn't. But I can be sitting in silence doing something. I could be sewing, I could be still be doing something, but that to me is meditative. If I have to sit and try to meditate, it just doesn't work. And guided meditations, although I have done some about being present, and I've gone for a walk and listened to them at the same time. And that was the best way I could experience them, because I was doing something, I was being active while I was doing it. So that did help me when I was depressed, actually. And I'd get out with my son and I would listen to that. Time away from screens, which I just sound like the most teenage mum ever, but time away from screens, time away from external stuff coming at you, just makes such a huge difference. Even 10 minutes, I swear it can reset your brain in. So at least it can for me.
Yeah, I think being quiet, but I think the main thing is to listen and to feel. There are so many people who push these voices down, who, they have all these worries, they push it down, try and take, and it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to get bigger and bigger and louder. You have to face your issues, face your problems, face your demons, face your behaviors. I think it's like addiction. If you have got bad behavioral things, you have to face them and find out where they're coming from. Is it because you need validation from people, because you feel empty? So why are you acting like that? And then you have to work on it. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. But when you've done it, it is amazing how your life will transform. Which brings me to you, Lucy. How has your life transformed now then from when you were, as we say, you were in quite a dark place? I know you were, because I talked to you during those times. I think a lot of people were, as you said, in that 3-year period. Janet Claire described it the other day as a nightmare that she still hasn't got over. But, from 3 years ago or 4 years ago, from when I first met you to now, what is the transformative period or effect? How have you transformed, Lucy?
In some ways, not at all, because I don't know that I am any different at the core of my being, right? I'm happier. And it was like a reset, and then the worst thing happened. The worst thing that could happen personally there are lots more awful things, I'm sure, could happen, but what for my whole life had been, before I'd had children, what was the worst thing that could happen happened. You carry on living, and then it becomes what other good things are there. And those, all of those memories are so important. And I think just realizing the phase of life that I'm in as well has been quite liberating. I'm going through a lot of changes. I'm mad hormonal, peri, whatever, all of that.
Can I just say there, Lucy, there was a slight pause there, and you said I'm mad hot, and there was a pause in the thing. I thought you were going to say I'm mad hot.
That's never changed. That's forever. I've got 3 kids. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, I have to tell you a funny story. When I had Fred, I was renting somewhere, and then we moved into the house that we're in now. And I had Fred, he was quite young, and then less than 2 years later, I had Joan. And we'd gone somewhere, I don't know where we'd gone somewhere, and we stopped at a service station. So I had one very small toddler and a baby, right? And we were at the services, and we were just sitting there, something to eat. Fred was in like the high chair. Joan was probably on one of us, I don't remember. And, we're eating away, and this lady, I think, was cleaning, and we just started chatting, because I just talk to anyone who'll talk to me. And I don't know why, but we started chatting, and she just went, "Oh, look at you two. Do you not have a telly?" And we didn't have a telly, and we couldn't stop laughing. We were like, "No, we don't have a telly." So if you're having a dry season, turn your telly off. That's what I say. Get rid.
So that is a whole other podcast right there, Breaking the Blocks, how to create children, turn the TV off. Yeah. You've lowered the tone right down, Lucy, but that's why I wanted you on the podcast. We've just got to give some light and shade. We've got people, way up there, and then we got it right down in the gutter with Lucy. So you are in a better place right now. I mean, and the thing is, Lucy, you'll have another journey to go on as well, because I think we are constantly evolving. And I think if we're not constantly evolving, then we've got a problem, because, your life is a journey, and you have to keep evolving as you go on it, because everything is ever changing around you, and you have to adapt to those changes. But I think, as you said, it's about having that core, which is the same. So as you said in your, I can't get you say the word core now. Core, Lucy.
I do have that effect on people. Can't help it.
But it is about having that core character. But I think for me, Lucy, I look at you and I think you've got strength, you've got that amazing character, you've got that willingness to learn, to be open, to be vulnerable, to listen. And those are all the elements that we need. The people who are not vulnerable, the people who don't listen to themselves, the people who won't change, don't want to change, or I think won't change, don't want to change. They are the ones who are going to have difficulties, because I do believe that we're sent situations to test us. And if you don't get on the right path, eventually that's when everything falls to the ground.
Yeah, and it's not even when you're being tested. It's when you're feeling comfortable. And that's one of the big things that I've realized as well. I could stay doing something that feels very comfortable, but I'm not challenging myself. I don't have to challenge myself in some really awful, massive way. I'm not going to do anything I don't want to do. But if I don't try, I'll never know what I could achieve or what difference I could make somewhere else. And I've been fortunate that I've not worked in jobs that I really didn't like. I've done things I didn't love, but I've always been quite lucky in that way. So my heart goes out to you if you are in a job that you really, really hate, but then maybe you're there because you feel comfortable doing it, and and it's familiar to you, and there's a routine in a way that's mundane, and that's, it's okay if you're okay with it, but if you're really not liking it and it's causing negativity, then that's the time to make a change. Or if you're happy where you are and you're comfortable, but you're not experiencing any learning or development, then maybe you want to look at, are there other places you could go, or is there somewhere else you could be, or a different kind of job or career. And a lot of all of the learning I did myself, I didn't have to pay for, because there are grants that you can get. So if you're not financially stable or you're on a low income, you can get grants from a lot of these learning places, and you can get the courses paid for. So, look into that. There are ways of doing things that don't cost loads of money. And then if that brings you a bit more financial stability, maybe that's one less worry taken away. So it's just like little steps and little things that you can do. And they're not it's not easy. It wasn't easy working full time and doing a course and being a parent, that it was a lot. But I made myself do it because I knew if I was going to get the job going into a career that I wanted, or do the job that I wanted to do, I would have to sort of prove myself a little bit, or just at least show that I was somebody who did want to self-develop. And it might not even be to do with your work, but maybe somebody wants to learn a different craft, or learn a craft, or learn how to play a particular instrument, or things like that. Maybe there are places that loan instruments, or do things at a discounted rate depending on your financial circumstances, or whatever it may be. Or maybe you could just reach out to your community and learn from somebody in your community. There are lots of ways of doing things that take some of those restrictions away. And I think we can talk ourselves out of things for all kinds of reasons, and that's how you end up stuck. And stuck can be comfortable and it can feel nice, but in terms of evolving yourself and knowing your self-worth and fulfilling your capabilities, it's maybe not, it's not giving you as much as life could be, if you reach out and try and do some of those things. My dream is to be a singer in Nashville. It's never going to happen, but maybe I can go do some karaoke for fun. In my kitchen, I am Dolly Parton, and that is just enough for me. So little things, little steps, ways you can, you know, fulfill yourself. Any little thing that you can do, I think is good. And each little step you take, you think, do you know what? I did that. I did that. And if I did that, maybe I can do this. And maybe, I can achieve something else other than what I had. I mean, I have no plan, so it's difficult for me because I don't have a plan as such, but just be recognizing what options there are, and you're not limited, whatever your circumstances, you're not limited. There are ways round things. It's speaking to the right people. A lot of times it sucks, but it's who you know. And being part of your community, getting involved. Go to your library. Librarians know, I didn't say that right. Librarians know everything. They know a lot about what's going on. If you're in a faith, people in your faith group, in your religious, whatever they might be, temples, churches, various things, you know, all those people often come from whole different walks of life. Reach out to people, have conversations, and see what arises. Volunteer if you don't want to work. Volunteer part-time. Volunteer for half a day. Doing something different and challenging yourself, as hard as it is, can be really, really good.
Well, you challenged yourself today, Lucy. You came
I
onto this
did.
Breaking the Blocks podcast because you said you don't like looking into a camera, and you did it.
Yay me.
Yeah, you go, you. I do think, in all honesty, though, good for you, Lucy, because you have done it. And actually, it's been a lovely, lovely chat with you. And I think, you've provided some really good inspiration there for people to make those changes. As you say, it's about just starting and doing something. But, I love your little a piece of advice like picking up a pebble and then you remember that day and that gives you some happiness. And what's really great as well, Lucy, is that, you are a person who has struggled with severe depression and anxiety. And I know a lot more than other people do about the last 3 years and what you've been through. And you have come through the other side. And I think that's good for people to hear as well, because there may be someone who's listening to this right now who, as I say, is laying on the bathroom floor. That reminds me of that Katy Perry song. And I think she wrote it when Russell Brand had dumped her. And she talks about laying on the bathroom floor. And, it's a really great, the lyrics are brilliant about how she, what are the words? By the grace of God, I took a look in the mirror and decided today I was not going to be taken out that way. It's a brilliant song. It's a really, really, very strong song. But that's true. Look at yourself in the mirror. Nothing's going to take you out. You are going to move forward. Things are going to get better. They always do. I'm reminded of that other song by Bruce Springsteen. And it's a line that he repeats about 8 times in a song. But it's so true, because he says, good times come and good times go. Good times come, good times go. And he says it like 8 times because that's life.
Mm-hmm.
So you can change, you can move, you can grow, you can evolve, and you can come through difficulties. So thank you so much, Lucy. It's been an absolute joy, with some giggles along the way. You horny lady. You.
I don't know if I'm going to be known now. That's not bad, though. I'll take it. That's not bad. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for the tears and the laughs and the honesty and the realness of you. You are doing amazing. And things are just growing and developing in a really, really good way. I feel that for you.
Yeah, I do as well.
Good.
I was just going to say I'm waiting now for the bad thing to come in and challenge me.
Don't wait for the.
I'll deal
You know
with
what?
it.
It'll come anyway. It will come when it's ready to come. Don't anticipate it.
Yeah.
Don't anticipate it, because it will. It's like you say, the good and the bad. It just comes. And the bad thing could be tiny. The bad thing could be so small you don't even see it. So don't look for it. Just keep looking for the good. Look for what you can do. Look for what you can control. Because any bad thing, you can't control it anyway. That's what I've come to realise. You can't. We've only got so much control. And we can control the good. We can control the good. We can't control the bad.
Yeah. Well, today has been good.
Yay.
And we've controlled it. Well, we haven't controlled ourselves quite fully. But it's been lovely. So thank you, my love. Have the rest of a wonderful day. Please go and turn on the television if your husband's in the house. Okay.
Absolutely not.
Just before you go, lovely listener, can I ask you a favour? If you have a friend who you think would enjoy listening to this podcast, would you mind please telling them about it? It helps me to spread the word, and you never know, they might get a life lesson out of it, or at the very least, just have a lovely 40 minutes of relaxing time for themselves. The second thing to say is that if you have enjoyed this, it would really help me if you would give me a little quick like or a comment, especially if you're listening on one of the podcast platforms. It just means that when anybody lands on the page, they can see that people have reviewed it, they've liked it, enjoyed it, and got something out of it. So if you wouldn't mind leaving me a review, that would be amazing. And the final thing to say is that if you are a business and you're thinking, how do I get my message out there? Well, you could do it on this podcast. All you have to do is reach out to me, rachel@breakingtheblocks.com. The details are below in the box. Thank you so much to everybody for listening and enjoying and saying the lovely things that you're saying.